Okay, we're live. What is up, guys? Four Corners back with another episode. I am your host, Ray. You can find me online at Rayvon Hackshaw. Um, just us today. My fellow host of the show, Peter Bucket since '88. How is Alaska treating you?
What's up, Ray? It's not raining or snowing right now, so things good. Things are good.
Good, good. We will pray to the Alaskan wilderness. I'm not sure what happens up there, but glad you're doing well. Um, The are you enjoying? I mean, might as well start off with this. Are you enjoying football season so far?
Oh, you know it. I mean, anytime your team wins on a Hail Mary, you're gonna remember that season for a while.
I bet. I bet. Uh, do you? So when you say that, I'm going to remember this season for a while. How do you imagine you're going to remember this? Do you feel like it's going to be? Are you going to remember this fondly to some extent? I'm sure, right? It's a resurgence of talent and interest and engagement. But what do you feel like the story is that you'll tell your children, etc. When you're like, oh, I remember back when Prime was here.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the thing that sticks through the most is just the perseverance, the never give up attitude. No matter how things are going, one thing you can always say about a Coach Prime team is like they never give up. So I know they're going to fight to the end, whether things are going good or not. So it's always fun to root for guys that you don't have to worry about their effort and interest level.
Are you so obviously your team being the Buffs? Are you how engaged with the Broncos are you so far?
I mean, I'm aware of their record, but I switched my schedule around so that I could watch college football, and I have work every Sunday, so I haven't
Ah,
watched a second of Broncos.
okay. Well, they much like my Ravens have stepped into the realm of winning football games, which is better than not winning football games. So progress. I feel a sense of optimism in the community as a whole. Partly because you lose two games in a row, and knowing the way the Broncos community is, people get into some dark places. They have high expectations for themselves and for the team, and maybe is that realistic or not? I think that's debatable, but it's nice to see my friends step off the ledge, so to speak.
Definitely,
Yeah. Also, if my Ravens could win a game, that's a good start.
it was. It's always fun to beat the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say I hate the Cowboys because me, it takes a lot. You have to like personally offend me to get me to actually hate you. I just don't think about the Cowboys.
I was about to
And
say they're in Utah Jazz territory for you. They're just over here. Don't
I
care
mean, they
about them.
always yeah, they always have been. It's funny because they are quote unquote America's team, but
Yeah.
that makes their mediocrity all the more salient. If that makes sense, like the fact that they're always just like, oh yeah, they won 8 wins and then they lost in the first round, and that's been my whole life, more or less. Uh,
I was
you
about to
know,
say that makes sense. You're actually like right at the age to where you've been around for a while, but you've never actually witnessed like the Cowboys dominant era.
the idea of the Cowboys dominating anything, um, no, yeah, it doesn't sit right with my. I can't imagine it. I'm sorry.
Right.
So I'm enjoying the Derrick Henry experience, which is nice. That's been fun. Having a running back you're excited to see get handed the ball, that's cool. And
Always.
I think they're doing a better job for all. I'm pretty sure there's like one Nuggets fan I know who's also a Ravens fan, and actually the host of Locked On Ravens, also a Nuggets fan. So if y'all
Oh,
want
how
to
about
tweet,
that?
yeah, if y'all want to tweet at him, maybe I'll retweet. Y'all can support me and collabing or something. I don't know, but getting that dynamic between Lamar and Derek, leveraging against each other's gravity, I think that's been really nice to see, and they're finally getting into some level of comfort in that. So I'm not saying Super Bowl, but we'll see.
Oh yeah, the long season. I'm not worried about them.
Yeah. So to actually get into basketball topics, Media Day is coming up. I believe it is tomorrow. Today is Wednesday, the 25th. I believe it's Thursday, the 26th. I mean, just off the top, what are some things? I mean, we've been doing this for a while, for a few years now, and we've both been fans for a good while as well in the NBA. And I think we kind of have an understanding of how media days sort of operate. Um, what are some things maybe you're hoping to hear out of media day, and what are some things that like you expect, I guess, and maybe what's the differential there?
Well, I don't know. I don't really put a whole lot of stock in media day the way some people do. But I guess I still want to hear how hungry the guys are, because if you remember after the loss, I kind of talked about how it didn't really seem like they were taking it that hard.
Hmm.
So at the end of the day, like, I get it, it's just sports. It's not like life or death. But I really think that just from a competitive standpoint, adding Russell Westbrook to the locker room is going to be really good for these guys. I'm not, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they're not competitive, because I mean, Jokic clearly gives it everything he's got and then still plays for his Olympic team. Jamal played for his Olympic team. But I do think that it's good to add a few new characters, especially when you have a guy as accomplished as Westbrook who hasn't won, um, to now join a group of a core that has won. I'm really interested to see what he has to say, because as we know, Russ has always been a guy who's like, he's not going to back down from anybody, right? I mean, he was teammates with KD, and I'm pretty sure, still like led the team in shots, which was sort of the beginning of, I think, the eventual breakup there. I think the media probably played a part in that. Everybody's saying like KD was tired of Russ. I never actually heard KD say that. I don't know about you. Um, but now he's older in his career. Obviously, things haven't gone great at his last few stops. I'm just interested to hear what he has to say, his mindset, and also interested to hear what he has to say about Jokic, because as we know, we haven't really heard a lot of great players that are currently playing talk about Jokic unless forced to. So it's always interesting to see, what the other main characters in the league have to say.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's always one of the things that I enjoy most with anyone really is introducing them to Jokic and, observing and maybe from a third person enjoying them sort of realizing how good he is in noting all the little details about what he does on the court at any given time. I know, kind of like you were saying, I've never heard anyone say anything bad about Westbrook himself, and usually it's the opposite. In fact, that every interview, every player podcast, things like that, I see it's people have nothing but good things to say about Russell Westbrook. So the fact that Jokic wanted him, the fact that Westbrook chose to be here, I mean, I think it should be good. I'm excited to see how that goes positively. Um, Let me ask you this, and this is maybe more of a prediction. Who has the best take from media day on the team or organization? Could be a coach, could be an
Ooh,
assistant.
who has the best take?
Best statement,
Um,
maybe not a take, but who's that headline that you see tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon, I should say, that is like, oh, nice.
so I feel like, as a general rule, young guys tend to be more open because they don't know any better. So I'll go with Peyton Watson, just because I know that he's still hungry to get better and to get more minutes and get more shine and status in the league. So I can see him being like, getting benched in the playoffs really motivated me. I've been in the gym all summer, and, I want to make my mark on this team this year, or something like that. Like, I could see him saying something that's going to make us, either be excited or be like, wow, that's pretty bold statement. Whereas I feel like a lot of our starters are pretty mild mannered, except for Mike. He's always a loose cannon. You never know what that guy's going to say. But I think he's been saying crazy stuff for long enough now that we're kind of used to it.
It's funny. I don't feel like Mike is that out of pocket very often. I mean, he makes bold statements. He will say
He doesn't know
"Oh,
that they're always bold, though, does he?
maybe not," but I do feel like I'm trying to give him credit. He brings a level of humility, and I think that
Right.
translates very well in his interviews for the most part. Does he sometimes put his foot in his mouth? Yeah. But sometimes, I don't want to say a lot of the times because he doesn't make too many like definitive statements like this, but he usually has good points when we're talking about basketball, at least. So I think he'll be an interesting conversation partner for whoever's all the media members at Media Day. You talk about the young guys. I actually find okay, so this is maybe layers of interest, but I find that the guys who are covering the team, they find it most interesting to talk to the veterans, the guy, and not just the starters, but maybe even the guys in their mid to late 30s. And I kind of feel like DeAndre Jordan is someone I really want to hear from. I think he'll say something that's maybe a little bit more understated because it's DeAndre Jordan who's really checking for that byline. But at the same time, someone like that, I think, 16, 17 years in the league, I think he's in, will have a good read for how the team is feeling, if it's optimistic, if it's how serious it is, how lighthearted, or I don't want to say dark, but they're coming off, a playoff disappointment. They're coming off. I mean, Jokic, I think, did really well international basketball, but Jamal, I think, not so much. It's going to be interesting to kind of find out what the temperature of the team is, and I feel like he'll be the most interesting quote for me, anyway. Um, but yeah, should be fun. Do you? So, I guess moving forward from that, Michael Malone is a guy who he's not in a contract year. I don't think. Like as far as I understand it, this is the first year that his actual extension kicks in, where he's now one of the highest paid coaches in the league. At the same time, I want to say it was a poll among, it might have been media members, it might have been organizational staff who were questioned about this, about who the best coaches in the league were, and Michael Mullen plays 15th. And we're coming off of, again, a playoff disappointment. Um, it's a high stress situation because of where Denver is, having Nikola Jokic, having one of the best players in the league, wanting to be so good. How much pressure do you feel like Malone is under? And what would you say maybe is par for the course for him? Maybe, okay, I'll put it this way. What will keep him his job and what will make us happy with him? Because I think those might be two different things.
Yeah, I think if he makes the West Finals or later, he's safe. If we lose in second round again, I wouldn't be a person that jumps ship, but I could understand people, maybe getting frustrated then and saying it's time to do something new or, you know, um, I think we'll have a pretty good idea sort of how the season goes because I think a lot of times when coaches are near the end, it's kind of like the writing's sort of on the wall for both sides. I don't think we're there yet. I think they still respond to Malone. Um, and I think that I think the players they still got along with him great. The most important relationship on the team is your best player and your coach. So as far as we know, Jokic and Malone are good. Um, and then there's also, there is the extra little angle of the Cronkies don't really like to spend money to like pay somebody to not coach. So unless he just does an abominable job and wants to get fired, I feel like have to be like a everything goes wrong year for him to get fired after this season. That's what I'm saying.
Hmm. I think it's. Hmm. I almost feel like it's not even like a level of wins. I mean, obviously, a championship would secure him that new bag. It is. I don't want to say it's a contract year, but it's so if this is his first year of the extension, I want to say the extension is 2 years, so that would make next year like the lame duck season, and most coaches don't go into that year as a lame duck. That's usually not the case. So I feel like maybe I'm a little bit higher on the this could be it for Michael Malone like scale. But at the same time, I do agree with what you're saying, and maybe would even lean into that heavier in the sense of how the vibes are might say a lot more than how many games they win or how far they go. If they lose in the finals, but they just kind of collapsed and they lost in five, I think that's that might be it. But if you lose in the second
Really?
round, well, I think the stakes are so high, and with also we haven't talked since the Murray contract. I don't think have maybe we have. I'm not sure. It's been the offseason blurs together, but with
You and I
Jamal
haven't.
yeah, I don't think we have like one on one like this. Jamal being under contract, Jokic being under contract, Mike being under contract for 2 more years after this. I want to say. It's really only Aaron Gordon. I think the roster is pretty locked in. The long term plan of the young guys, that's pretty locked in. They're pretty committed to that thing. I don't think you can really, at least at this juncture, swap unless Luca becomes available, unless Giannis becomes available. Something like that happens where you can maybe go big game hunting and make a real meaningful roster change. I think the next biggest change you can probably make outside of that core four guys is it's probably Michael Malone. So I would understand, especially he's been around a long time. It's been almost 10 years. Most it's interesting. Most coaches who I feel like make it that long, they're usually seen in a certain way. Like they'll never be fired. Like they're the golden child of whatever it is. We're talking like Spolstra, Popovich tier coaches. And Michael Malone doesn't have that respect, I feel like. Kind of tying back into the poll I was talking about. It doesn't feel like Michael Malone is that everybody looks to him and say, who's a really good coach? That guy. And it's hard to say what that means because you have the best player in the world and you've got a great roster. So you're trying to find out, well, how much is Malone? How much is Jokic? How much is Murray? How much are these other guys? What are all the factors? But yeah, I could see Malone being fired. We only have so many years left of the dynasty potential there, and losing a couple years with Jamal's injury and not winning last year. I mean, the idea of just winning the one championship, I don't think it sits right with a lot of people. So I feel like if there's anybody who's under a lot of pressure right now, it's Michael Malone. Um, but I mean, in that context, maybe talking about pressure, how much pressure do you feel like Jamal Murray's feeling coming into the season?
Um, I would say outside pressure a ton, but like Jamal doesn't really strike me a guy that feels pressure, if that makes sense. Like I feel like he's usually risen to the moment. We talk about that a lot in sports, how like some players run to the moment, some players run away from the moment. I don't think we would ever describe Jamal as a guy that runs away from the moment. So yeah, I think when if you want to talk about pressure, it's kind of like what are you talking about in terms of who's creating the pressure. I mean, yeah, there is a lot of pressure on him.
Mhm.
I mean, I think that's obvious, like with the contract, especially. I know a lot of Nuggets fans are already sort of like they're down on him or they think it's a bad contract, which, everybody's entitled to their opinions, but I'm still on the side of like, we won a championship with this guy as the number 2. Like, he's good enough. If he's locked in, if he's healthy, I'm not worried about Jamal. But yeah, I mean, I think, he's been on record as saying like he wants to play his whole career in Denver. So I think him putting pen to the paper uh proves that. Obviously it's a lot of money, but it's like, I think he loves playing with Jokic. He realizes how good that is for him. And, I think we also know Jamal to be a pretty mild mannered guy. I mean, yeah, he's got the New Balance contract, but he's not like a guy that's always like trying to get his name out there, really. He's on social media a little bit, but he seems like more of a lurker. He seems like more the kind of guy that likes to like read the comments and see what people are saying about him so that he can like use it as motivation. He doesn't really clap back at people the way somebody like KD does. So I think Jamal's going to be pretty motivated, but I also think he uses it as fuel. I don't think he looks at stuff and goes like, "Oh man, everybody's down on me. Now I'm going to feel sorry for myself." Like, he doesn't carry himself like that at all.
Hmm. Yeah, I do think he's learned. He takes a lot. Maybe he's learning from Jokic, or maybe he's learning from his own past experiences. But yeah, he just doesn't seem super online. So I feel you there. I do. I think the criticism, like the outside criticism, will be at a level where it's never been before. Partly because of the money. When you're and I'm when you are paid that much money, I think you start to get compared to other guys who also get paid that much money. And it hits a little bit different when you're making $50 million and when you were making 30 to 33. I think it was prior to this. And I don't think it really matters this much right now, but I know he loves playing with Jokic. Does he love playing with Michael Porter? Does he love playing with Aaron Gordon? Because I think those are the guys who are probably going to be most affected by however this contract goes. Like Denver's going to have to make choices in some spots. And I don't know what the cap is going to be like in 3 years or 5 years or whatever it might be, but I have a hard time feeling like they'll be able to just keep the core. I mean, it was the core 5, now it's the core 4. I could totally understand maybe next year it's the core 3. Hopefully it's the core 4, but it could be the core 3. And how does Denver, if Denver doesn't come back, Denver doesn't get back to the finals, win another championship, who are people going to look at? I think people are going to look at Jamal Murray. But at the same time, I guess I say all that to say, I don't know if there's a lot of internal pressure because he already has the money. Like, what else is there to really say or do about it? Michael Malone could bench him tomorrow or next week, or in a month. And does it really matter because he's under contract? Could he ask out? Not really. Could he? I mean, I think he had so much leverage going to that contract negotiation because you have to maintain the asset and all these other things. And Cleveland or the San Antonio will pay him just as much, so you have to do it. Well, now you have the money. I don't know how much leverage Jamal Murray has anymore, if that makes sense. And like, I don't know if he's not getting enough shots or touches or getting it to look the way he wants it to look. I don't know if he has the sway. Can he save Michael Malone? For example, I don't know. I mean, I know Jokic could. I think we both agree with that, but I don't know if Jamal could step in and say, "Well, I don't really like how this is going. Mike can go," or sorry, Michael can go, or Michael should stay. So I kind of feel like it's going both ways. Internally, not a lot of pressure. You got the money, bag secured. Externally, pressure is going to be super high. But I mean, kind of going down the list. How about Mike? How do you feel like? What do you feel like this season means for him in terms of? I mean, Denver is looking for more out of the guys that they have. Do you feel like that places an expectation on him that he needs to take? I mean, we've been looking for like the leap from him for a while, but do you think he has a leap, and do you think there's a pressure on him to take it?
Well, real quick, just one thing you said about Jamal. I just want to say I do think he likes playing with Mike and with Aaron. I think that when they made the trade for Aaron Gordon a few years ago, he was like one of the first guys that was talking to him a bunch on the court, looking for him in the pick and roll, trying to get him going. And then ever since Mike's been a Nugget, Jamal has been trying to coach him up, teach him where to be, get him going. So and he did have a career high in assists last year. So I think Jamal likes his teammates, and I think that he's, I think you're trying to make it sound like he with this new contract that like the pressure is on him to like put up numbers or something. I think the only numbers he cares about is winning. Obviously numbers translates to like maybe being an all-star or not, but I think he's more locked into just like, okay, me and Jokic are going to be here. Let's try to win. As far as Mike goes, I don't really see a leap coming unless he gets more opportunities, I guess. I mean, he's basically been at like 30 minutes a game, about 16, 17 points a game, which has been good enough. The Nuggets keep winning in the 50s games. Um, he had a rough series against Minnesota, but he was great against the Lakers. If he doesn't play like he did against the Lakers, then we might not have won the first round last year. So I still have full confidence in Mike. I think he kind of started to add that little push shot last year. With varying levels of success. I think he's always working on his game though. So I'm always interested to see like if he adds little things here and there, because I don't expect him to be like a downhill, handle guy one day, but I do think that he can always add to his game a little pieces here and there that can make him a better player and help winning more.
Hmm. Yeah, I got you. Um, with Jamal, I don't know if there's a level to which I think it is the numbers, but the numbers I'm talking about are like games played is a big one. I
Hmm.
think if we see him for 50 games this year, I think that would be not ideal. And like maybe Denver is still winning because Jokic is so good and he doesn't need, like, he can carry through a regular season and lead a team to 50 wins without, I don't want to say that, not that Jamal doesn't matter, but we saw that when Jamal was out. I think they were okay in the regular season. They won a lot of games, all those sorts of things. But I think him playing more games and I think starting at a higher, we've seen him in October before. We've seen him in November before. That like 16, 17 points per game mark that he usually comes into seasons with. I think people are going to expect more from him in terms of that kind of, we don't need playoff Jamal. No one's asking him to say, you got to drop 35 a night in October. But I think we're hoping, and I have to imagine, if you're Booth, you sit down, you have that conversation with him, you're handing him this $200 million contract. You got to, there has to be a set of expectations that come with that. I mean, with great power comes great responsibility, all that stuff. Um, with Mike, so I think about a leap with Mike because I wonder if, like, what is the dynamic around the team? They have new players, Russell Westbrook, Dario Sarge. Do they modify how they utilize their core in the regular season at all? In the past, it's always been Jamal, four bench guys. That's the bench for the most part. It hasn't worked. It hasn't been great for Jamal, and it doesn't feel like it puts him in the right kinds of opportunities that he's comfortable with. Um, I do have thoughts about maybe how they could do that better when he is leading the bench unit, but I also wonder maybe I don't want to say abandon Jamal leading the bench unit, but maybe you tie him more to Jokic because that is what they do. That is the Jokic Murray two-man game, their personal dynamic. That's what's shined about this team for the last half decade. Um, can Mike, can Aaron Gordon, can those guys I would be really curious, how they would look in more of a central role. We've seen Aaron Gordon be a number one guy before. I think he has a lot of those. I think he has more Orlando bag left in him than he does gritty defense, grind out, put my body on the line every single night in the regular season left in him, if that makes sense. I still think he can do it in the playoffs, but since the last episode, I've turned 30 and my body hurts. As you get up in those years, doing those things night in and night out, I think it takes a toll. So I guess I all that to say, I kind of see there's some light in that tunnel. But yeah, maybe looking at the bench, how do you see that playing out? Do you think they kind of keep it the way it has been with Jamal leading it? Do you think, or maybe would you even want to see them explore other options? Or um, if you're the chef in that kitchen, what recipe are you going to?
Yeah, so I have absolutely no idea what the rotation's going to be, but historically Russ is a guy that likes to run. So I think what you're saying makes sense to where Jamal might be tied to Jokic more and then Russ gets to lead the bench. Um because Jamal doesn't really like to run, as we know. He's more of a half court point guard. So that's going to be interesting. But just so I'm like so fascinated to see how it looks because I really don't know how it's going to look. But I do have one sort of bold-ish prediction. I think that with adding Russ and adding Dario, I think the team is actually slightly deeper this year, and I think that I'm really not worried about the Nuggets in the regular season. I think they've got enough chemistry to where they should get off to a good start. And I think they'll probably win somewhere between 53 and 58 games again. Is that going to be good enough to be a top four seed in the West? I don't know. That's like a whole different conversation. But that level of team in the regular season, I'm pretty confident in. It's the playoffs that this team is going to have to answer the questions about. But the nice thing is, Ray, Malone's got 82 games to figure out what guys can work well together, what guys can't. And obviously, it's still another 82 games for Christian and Payton and then Julian Strother to gain run and get more confidence.
Yeah, I'm optimistic about the young guys. Hopefully I think at least two of them hit. I
Yeah.
hope. I could see more.
I mean, I would say Brown's already a hit. Like, I feel like he already is a competent NBA player. I don't know if that's being a homer, but
Yeah.
maybe the word proven is too far, but don't you feel like you already kind of trust him? At least as like a 20 to
Um,
25-minute guy. I'm not saying necessarily as like a 30-minute guy.
I think he'll be even better than KCP.
Yeah.
That's my honest opinion.
Okay.
Um, I would say hitting is probably for him, hitting is at least meeting that threshold of the starters being as good as they were last year.
Hmm.
When I say at least two of them, I think the floor is that one of Watson, Strother, or Zeke. I mean, obviously, because Holmes isn't playing, but I could see I think at the very least one of those guys pan out. I'm hoping for more. I'm hoping it would be great if all three of them were contributing at varying capacities. I know Zeke is not in the top 10 in the rotation, but I'm not totally out on him as a player and what he can contribute in a unit, especially next to other bigs. But I'm not sure. It's hard to know because it's hard to, we haven't really seen Michael Malone have to put something together like this.
Right.
So we shall see. I'm optimistic because I think Michael Malone has. I've been critical of him throughout his tenure in Denver, but if there's one thing I've noticed is that every year he's a little bit better in at least one area. There was a time when the Malone he had like an anger issue, and I feel like he got a little bit better on that. There's a time when he struggled with managing timeouts, and I feel like he got better on that. There's a time when I felt like he was a little too quick to pull the plug on guys he's trying to integrate into the team, and kind of struggling to convince players that he has their backs. Not Jokic, not Jamal. Obviously, he has their backs, but guys who are newer, guys who are a little bit less proven. Um, but I think he's improved on that to some extent. So, can he improve in his sort of? I compare it a lot. I know we usually make football analogies. I don't have a football analogy for you today. I think it is a lot like cooking. I think it's understanding your ingredients, understanding the core of what makes them good and useful. And what makes a good chef is like, okay, you get it. You look at your table and you see what you've got in the pantry, and you see what you've got in the fridge, and maybe you look in the freezer and see what you can thaw out. And you bring all that together and put it together and do what you need to do to make it a good dish. Some people, I think, have that level of creativity, and some people need HelloFresh.
So, Ray, I have a question for you then,
Mhm.
because I like your points about he's been given new ingredients now. What kind of dish he's going to make? Do you think so? Two-part question. Well, first we'll go with what he should do, and then second, you can tell me what you think he will do. Do you
Sure.
think Michael Malone should try to maximize the bench this year? Because I feel like one sentiment about the difference between the 2024-25 Nuggets and last year is, well, they're deeper, but the starters will be worse. So that could be a benefit in terms of like, maybe if the bench is better now, you get more blowouts. And that's another way that you can rest guys, right? If you remember those Warriors teams, one of the reasons they kept going so deep in the playoffs was, I mean, obviously they're a great team, but it's like, do you remember how many fourth quarters Steph didn't even have to play? He was just like chilling on the bench for the entire fourth quarter. We never get to do that. Yes, I'm using we like I'm on the team, but
We struggle with that.
yeah, the sentiment is like, oh, the Nuggets, they're not that good. They just barely win games. And I'm like, guys, do you actually watch the Nuggets? Like the starters kill everybody. The bench comes in and gives up the lead, and then the starters have to work hard again. So it's like, it's kind of like the Nuggets have been two teams this whole long time. So I would really like to see Malone put some more, firepower with the bench, preferably MPJ, um, so that those units could be better? Or do you think that he should and will try to maximize the starters the way he kind of has been the last few years?
I think so, particularly in the context of everything that I said before about Malone and his tenure and his position and the pressure and the expectations. I think it's time to really just get aggressive, I think, as a coach for him. We know the starters are good. The best punch is good. And I think that's maybe the most important part of a team being successful in this league, whether you're trying to win games or whether you're trying to win championships. You need your best punch to be good. The second order of business that I would recommend, look at your best punch. Look at the counter punch that teams are going to have for you, namely teams that try to pack the paint and teams that try to, while packing the paint, get really aggressive with Jamal, getting him off the ball. That's like a big thing. How do you solve that sort of dynamic? That is something where you'd like to see him explore with different. Maybe that means more Michael Porter at the four. I'm not saying you got to do that full time, but exploring that in the regular season because we have established over the last decade the regular season does not matter, right? That's what y'all been telling me. That not y'all, but that's what that's the energy that the team gives every December, January, February. It's just a Tuesday. This loss to Charlotte doesn't really matter, and maybe it doesn't. So if it doesn't, maybe you can explore figuring out how to counter what Minnesota did to you last playoffs. Third order business, yes. Like, can you find not even a bench unit? Because let's be honest, it's not the bench. It's when Jokic steps off the floor. What do you do? Do you have a plan? How do you operate? How do you? It doesn't have to be like regimented, like you do this, then that, then that. Like, I'm going to call this specific series of plays, but just a framework. Who do you play through? What is your? How do you get paint touches? I think that's honestly the big thing is like, how do you create opportunities to go to the free throw line, to create those sort of get the ball into the paint and then back out to the perimeter type situations? How do you do those things? And I think that requires a level of creativity. And so that's kind of, and tying back into, I really like Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter. With you pair him with guys like Russell Westbrook, I think they can, they'll run very well. Um, even Zeke Naji, I think, has a role in a unit like that because all of the things that Zeke can't do, set good screens, catch the ball in the paint in traffic, finish in traffic, all those things that, he doesn't have to do that. If you're next to Aaron Gordon, if you're next to Michael, all the offensive skill sets you need, they got that. Aaron Gordon's a great ball handler. Not a great ball handler. He's not Kyrie Irving, but for his size and position, he's been a number one option. He has that level of control. Mike is a great shooter, floor spacer. He has his own gravity. Zeke kind of just has to stay out of the way. Whether it's him or whether it's Dario, we know Dario can play. Figuring out a format for them that centers them and focuses around them. I think that also lets you give opportunities to so like fourth order of business. What is your future? It's Christian Brown, it's Peyton Watson, it's Julian Strawther. Now you have opportunities. If you're not playing Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter, that's a lot of time you could give Watson to play with Jokic and get him used to that, being in that environment, understanding how that is supposed to operate, whether he's catching and attacking off of closeouts or playing the dunker spot or whatever it may be, maybe running the continuity, maybe being a link in the continuity out of the dribble handoff, those sorts of things. If all of that, I think, is what Michael Malone should be doing with the regular season. If it's the same sort of miserable, okay, the starters are going to play 8 minutes and then they're going to, and then it's the bench and then they're bad and we all have to sit through it and the front office has to sit through it and Michael Malone has to sit through it and we all just have to roll our eyes and say, well, the regular season doesn't matter. Hey, we're all going to be miserable. Like, let's just be honest. Like, we're not going to have a good time. And is it basketball supposed to be fun? So and I think that would also just it would rub I think a lot of people the wrong way because it would be the opposite of learning the lessons, right? It would be the opposite of Michael Malone taking that next step. Of if he's just doing the same things, that would be sad. I guess that's I don't know if I answered your question fully.
Yeah, I mean, just to play devil's advocate slightly, can we also just admit that like Nikola Jokic is the best player in the world, so when he comes off the floor, you're going to be worse. We just don't want the bench to be atrocious, right? Can you
Yeah.
just be like subpar? It's been a while since we've just had like a mediocre slash bad bench, right? They've always just been like one of the worst in the league, if not the worst. So we're not asking
Good.
Malone to like give us an elite bench here, but can you just build a group that doesn't like if you're up 12 when Jokic goes to the bench, don't be up 2 when he comes back. You know, can you be up 8?
Yeah. Yeah, it's that the bench has always had a low ceiling and a low floor, which is terrible.
Yeah.
Can they at least have a low floor and not a high ceiling, but good stretches? You want to see on a random Tuesday in January when sometimes the difference between a good stretch and a bad stretch is just energy and being willing to work and being engaged on a Tuesday in December or January when it's cold outside and you're in Utah with their lack of a functioning lake and yeah, you just I can accept that they will have bad stretches, but they need to also have good stretches and hopefully that averages out to something closer to neutral. That's
Yeah.
yeah.
So I have an interesting theory here. I don't know if there's a word for this, but maybe you can help me out. So if I take you back to like our childhood, did you ever play one of those basketball video games where if you made 3 shots in a row, you were on fire? And then it's like, oh, the player you have is on fire. So it's like now there's a higher chance that the next shot goes in. Or then like in real basketball, we call it a heat check, right? If a guy is heating up, oh, give him the ball, like he's more likely to make his next one. Well,
That's
with the
throwing
bench
shit.
came in, I felt like it was the exact opposite of that, right? It's like, oh, Jokic goes to the bench. Now let's see how these minutes go. Missed the first shot. Okay, other team comes down to score. Missed the second shot. Okay, other team comes down to score. If you miss and they score, you're going to call timeout. Don't you feel like that next shot, there's like so much pressure on whoever takes it as like, guys, don't screw this up. They're about to go on a run. It's like, it's almost like I could feel even through the TV, like the tension of the team of like, oh no, we're the bench, we're screwing this up again. Did you ever feel that?
Yeah. There is a there's a George Carl quote that I very much identify with. And he was talking about one of the most frightening things you can see on a basketball court. It's and I've both seen and experienced this. It's when you can't score. When you can't score, it's demoralizing in a way because you don't feel like you can get it back. And I
Right.
think I really appreciate that Michael Malone has instilled a culture of engagement with defense as a unit. And I think over the past 4 or 5 years, he's put out some bench units that you see the defensive potential.
Yeah.
I think Zeke right now is a good defender. He's still switchable. He's
Yeah.
still long. He's still
Oh, that's why he got a contract. That's why he's still in the NBA. That's his
right
NBA skill.
for sure. Um, at the same time, again, it's kind of like a recipe. Like you need salt in almost it's some amount of it. If you just cook bland food, no one's gonna like that. So you need a little bit of that salt. But if it's all just too salty, you gotta have that balance. And the good news is that I think the additions that they've made and the subtractions that they've made, honestly, um, removing Reggie Jackson, I think is a ceiling raiser for the offense, if
Hmm.
I'm being honest. Because Reggie, I think the nature of his game was that he can always get to his spot. He can always get to a shot, kind of, if I squint. Like I can. The concept of the plan was for Reggie Jackson to be able to get to his spots, even if you have four other players who don't know how to play offense. He can get up a shot. Cool, and they play defense. The best version of that would be when they would give up 4 points in 10 minutes, 4 points in 8 minutes, something like that. But they still weren't scoring, you
Yeah.
know? And so now that you're taking that away, Russ can have a good game on occasion. Strother, he can he's such a, it's funny because I don't know. He has the some of the traits of elite off ball scorers that I really appreciate.
Hmm.
I love his. He does this. If you're watching and you're like trying to learn how to play high school basketball, he does watch him and the way that he adjusts his positioning off ball, just in like little ways. It's like 5 steps here, 2 steps here. It's creating those passing lanes, creating that eye contact, drawing his man away from the ball. He still hasn't shot well though. So uh,
I'm really excited about Strother, man. I mean, you brought up the exact two guys I was thinking of that could change the bench fortunes this year. I think Westbrook, one, because of his ability to get downhill and draw fouls, right? That helps break up momentum and stop
mhm,
runs if you're getting points at the line. And then two is just, his relentless attitude. I mean, he's made a bunch of all-star teams. If a team, hits a couple threes in a row, he's not going to flinch. He's going to be like, all right, give me the rock. Let's get to work. And then, yeah, Strother, a really sneaky thing about him, Ray, that I noticed right away is like, oh, Michael Malone's drawing up plays for this guy. So he's definitely a Malone guy, right? We would think like, oh, Peyton and Christian, they're more defenders. Those are Malone guys. But like Strother, for whatever his style is, whatever you want to call it, Malone just seems to love his attitude and his basketball IQ. So I'm really looking forward to him, getting his feet wet more this year because, as you know, the most important thing as a young player is for your coach to have confidence in you. I mean, you can overcome it if the coach doesn't like you, but it's a lot harder.
yeah, yeah. I've similar thing. I have both seen and experienced this in my own life of having a coach who believes in you, going to bed at night knowing that like, okay, next game, my coach, he's still going to put me out there. He's still going to put me in those positions. It changes how you just go about your whole day, how you go about your whole life in a basketball context. So I definitely feel that. And then I think you're going to see the other linchpin, I guess, that we saw last year, that I think we won't this year, is Zeke Naji at center. I think Zeke, like I said, I think he can play. I don't think he can play center in the ways that are conducive to good offense. He's a good offensive rebounder. That's useful. That's more of a power forward thing, you know? Not a great defensive rebounder, which ironically means you just kind of get scored on a lot, which usually means you don't get a lot of rebounds, which usually means you don't get a lot of fast breaks. Not a good lob threat. Not super tall. Not a. I'm open to the idea that if you just ask him to stand in the corner and shoot like he did in his rookie year, that he can shoot well. I am open to the idea that reforming your shot takes time. Usually takes more than one season. He could play well, but he's not going to be in some kind of central role. He might not even be on the floor. So having Dario Sarge, I think, is a big ceiling. It both brings the ceiling back to a neutral point and maybe elevates a little bit by having a guy who can pass, who can shoot a little bit, who knows how to handle the ball, who can be he kind of glues the whole unit together offensively, does a little bit of which is what's needed and otherwise stays out of the way. Um, I would prefer, again, I would much prefer Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter be at the forward spots than Peyton Watson and I don't know who kind of rounds out the unit. I am curious.
Dario?
Dario. So yeah, we're talking Dario, Russ, Strother. The last two, it's Watson or Watson and I should say. I don't know.
Well, that's 5. Russ,
Russ.
Strother, Watson, Najee, Saric.
Oh, I'm not assuming Najee's playing. I know I
Oh, I
said
thought
all
you
that.
were. Okay.
Nope. Nope. I'm not. Especially, yeah, no, he could play, but I
I
wouldn't
mean, you
put him
got
as a
Blanco
lock.
if you want to do 10-man
Ah,
rotation.
yeah. I was like, I'm thinking of somebody. Vlaco would be when you have Vlaco and Dario on the court together. I
Not a lot
feel
of athleticism.
yeah, but that's fine. Like they're going to play hard. They're going to rebound, which I think is
Yeah.
important, and uh, they aren't going to make bad mistakes. I think they can facilitate and support Russ and Strother and whoever else is on the bench, who's on the bench unit from a scoring perspective. I don't know if you're going to run things through Peyton Watson. I think he can still be productive. You can still find him on cuts and things like that. And similarly, Vlatko and Sarge will do that very well. So honestly, I feel kind of optimistic. So we'll see. But I think there's a lot of room for growth. And growth is sometimes more important than wherever you are in a given moment.
Mm-hmm.
Taking that step from being bad to being neutral. Um, everything is relative. So,
Right.
I think there's it can't get well. I was going to say it can't get worse, but I know that's not always true. It can get worse, but I feel maybe that's kind of it, and kind of as we get towards the end of the show, that's what I'm thinking is like there is a lot of room for growth, but there's also potential for the stress and the pressure and the criticism that they're going to face. I know Michael Malone loves criticism. I feel like he just puts on Sports Center or ESPN or whatever and just is just taking notes. He's the actual note taker on the team of people talking shit about him. So
Well, I
um,
forgot to say, when you asked me who's going to have the biggest quote for media day, it could probably be Malone.
yeah, that's true. He knows there is
Did anybody talk
everybody
more
has their
shit
own.
after the championship than Malone?
No, you're right. I mean, that is very true. It's a very and we've known it to be a very humble, quiet team where Malone is almost the heart and soul of the team, which was a little weird. It was a little weird, but hey, that's
Right.
why you have Russ now. I think Russ can also be that and kind of provide a level of energy and enthusiasm and holding ourselves to standards. Let's hold ourselves to a standard night in and night out. That's how you build good habits.
Yeah.
And is everybody I mean, this is also Russ has made a lot of money in his own career, but I think he has also been humbled over the last few years in a way that makes it less. I think he's opened up to. I've always felt like the reason Russ has never won a championship has been Russ because he can't get over himself in a lot of ways. But being a borderline, or is he even an NBA player? Being in that conversation, being in those positions, I think has changed him in some ways that I would love to see come full circle in Denver.
Definitely. I think that for the longest time he's had a good work ethic, but he's been such a ridiculously elite athlete that he's gotten away with sort of his flaws. And I think in the last few years, you've seen that that's become made him less playable. So I think he finally realized, with some good coaching from Ty Lue, like, hey, man, you're still a good player if you focus on some different portions of your game. And he's become a really important offensive rebounder. That's another thing that it's kind of one of those things where you can measure it a little bit, right? Like you can measure a stat of like, oh, this guy got 3 offensive rebounds. But what you can't measure is like, okay, you just got to stop on Jokic, but now your point guard sprinted in, got the offensive rebound, kicked it out, and Porter hits a 3. That's like a huge momentum swing, like for your guys, and like a gut punch for the other team. That I think that's one thing fans are really going to enjoy about Westbrook this season.
I also think outlet passes, he's a guy who, talking about running, he runs with the ball, obviously, but I also think he's someone who can, whether it's Dario or Nikola, they'll get that rebound, see Russ. He'll be 3/4 down court already. So that'll be, I think, fun in a way that, honestly, have we had fun lately? I just don't feel like we have. I mean,
well, and
winning
you know
is
what else I just thought about, Ray? It's been a while since Westbrook's been on a team that's actually advanced in the playoffs. I mean, the Clippers made the playoffs last 2 years. They didn't advance. The Lakers didn't do much when he was there. And then he was on the Rockets and on the Wizards before that. So it's been like since before the bubble that he's actually like played winning playoff basketball. So he's going to be really hungry and I think excited and sort of reinvigorated to be on a good team again.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, if there was a criticism I'd have of last year's team is that they weren't particularly hungry.
No.
They had just gotten done eating. So
yeah,
I get that. So by the time you get back, by the time we podcast again, the season may be underway. I want to get some of these out before, preemptively. Do you have any predictions for the NBA season? Can I go first?
go for it.
Bowl. Let's go. I'm hextupling down. Okay.
Oh,
I'm not giving up. I think
I can't root for a Phoenix Sun, Ray. You know that.
He's not good, so it's fine. But he can be good. I think he can be a contributing player. That's it. Maybe be like 9th or 8th in the rotation and not be an embarrassment.
Okay.
All right, your turn. Go for it.
All right. Houston Rockets make the play-in.
That's a hot take.
Zion, All-Star.
Okay.
Let's see. What else?
I feel like for Zion, it's more about him just making the games threshold than him actually getting the votes.
Yeah, so he was healthy last year and didn't make the All-Star team. Okay, I got one hot one for you. You ready?
What's up?
I think Jimmy Butler gets traded.
Okay.
I don't know where. I'm just saying, like, the Miami Heat had an opportunity to extend him. He's an older player. They are a very responsible franchise because they don't operate in a way of like, oh no, we're a small market, we're going to lose this guy. No, if Jimmy Butler walks, they will be able to replace his salary slot with another star because they're the Miami Heat. But they also probably don't want to lose him for nothing. So if the writing's on the wall, I could see them moving him at the deadline to get younger and to get picks or something, because the Heat might not be good this year. I think it's like, oh, don't count out the Heat and Eric Spoelstra. Like, I get that. I'm not burying the Heat. I'm just saying the East has gotten a lot better. If they're just kind of limping towards the same like 8-9 finish again, are they going to look around and say, like, let's go for it again? Or are they going to say, maybe it would make more sense to move Jimmy and try to sort of retool this thing?
Yeah, no, I that honestly sounds reasonable. I don't know how much Jimmy is actually giving you on a. I mean, everybody loves highlights, and everybody loves a player's ceiling, and everybody loves what a player can give you in a moment. But when you're talking about signing a guy to a big money contract, some of it is like, are you meeting your responsibilities on a day to day basis, and what are you getting out of that player in that context? And I don't know how much you're getting out of Jimmy, like on a night to night basis for
Well,
80.
see, that's the thing is he sneakily had kind of a down year last year. He might be one of those things where somebody trades for him for like the playoff run, but they don't actually intend on giving him a big contract. Like he might not fetch a lot on the trade market.
You might be rent. I mean, at his price point, he might be a rental. That's true.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a team. I know people talk about Golden State a lot as a team that might be interested in someone like that,
Yeah.
trying to pull together like a last hurrah with that sort of with Steph mainly. Uh, I I mean, I could see him being one of those players at the deadline who is going to be on the outs, just interested in being moved, just because, yeah, Miami's not exactly in the most competitive spot right now.
Yeah, I could
Um,
see some sense maybe around a like Butler for Wiggins type deal, or I hate to say it, but like if the price is low enough, the Lakers are always sniffing around, right? I mean, they thought they had DeJounte Murray, but the Pelicans, I guess, had a better offer. So,
the
they're always going to throw
Lakers,
their name in the hat.
the Lakers are just outside your house with a boombox, waiting for you to slip up, waiting for you to not treat your girl right, and they're just going to be there. They're just going to be there with an open heart and an open checkbook.
Yeah.
I, I get, yeah, I get that too. I don't know if I have any the trade. I don't know what the trade market will be. Um, hmm. It's hard to say who the next big star to become available might be.
Right.
I Give me a moment. I'm trying to think. Oh,
Do you think Jalen Brown will ever win his own team?
yes,
Me too.
it's not that. I mean, it's just so obvious. I don't want to say obvious, but Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum are as a star and second best player so similar.
Hmm.
Um, Boston has won already. They've won a lot of. They've won so many games.
Yeah.
They've won a title. You kind of they're not going to be able to keep that team together. That's the other thing is like the the costs are astronomical. You're
Right.
trying to trade, not trade, but sell the franchise itself, which maybe you handle that internally and there's some continuity there. But I don't think anytime you're a new owner, I think it gives you a feeling of okay, I'm interested in what is already here, but I'm also open to freshening up a bit.
Right.
And they're just so close in talent level. Like I don't want to say they're not the same. I get that. You want Jason Tatum, best player on this team, sure. But they're closer, I would say, than almost any other star duo in the league now that Paul George isn't on the Clippers.
That's fair.
You look at LeBron and AD, it's ne- there was a time when they thought, oh, he's handing off the reins to AD. He's not.
Hmm.
But it's LeBron. It's LeBron's team. You look at Jokic, the Nuggets. It's Jokic. It's not to take anything away from Jamal Murray, but there's one
Right.
player for whom, no matter who is around him, the team is good, and that isn't Jamal Murray. And that's not a knock on him. That's just what it is. Um, Milwaukee, you know, I guess just talk about another team that is a little bit combustible. Giannis is clearly the guy, and Dame, as good as he can be at times, it, it just doesn't. At the very least, they don't have similar skill sets.
Well, he's another guy that you would say there's a lot of pressure on him, right?
Giannis, you mean?
Dame.
Oh, I want to say no,
Huh.
but that's because if they don't win, is that exclusively Dame, or is the team just kind of old and lacks talent? And Giannis
Fair.
is rarely healthy through a playoff series, through not through a playoff series, but they just struggle to get him through a season healthy.
I see what you mean. Plus, Middleton keeps getting hurt. He's breaking down, so I guess that
And
hurts them.
Dame isn't in his prime like that either.
Yeah.
And I don't think people love Dame, but how highly do they regard him really? I
Hmm.
don't know that they do. I don't know that he gets elevated. No one's ever talking about him as top 20 all time, top 30 all time, maybe he's top 50.
Right. I see what you mean.
So I
I
don't
have
think
one
he
last team I want to ask you about before I know we got to go.
all good.
This team is, I feel like, has the most like variance on what people are saying. The
Is it the
San
Knicks?
Antonio Spurs. A lot of people think they're going to be terrible, and a lot of people think that Victor is so good that they're going to like challenge for the play-in. How do you see it?
Cooper Flag, let's go.
Yeah.
Not because I think they couldn't win games, but
Okay.
I just don't think
They're
it
going to
makes
pull the
sense.
rug out.
It doesn't make I mean, they're improving, but
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense to me for them to try to really go out and trade for some veterans and like do that all that stuff yet. Um,
Well, you know they
well,
got Chris Paul and they got Harrison Barnes, right?
okay.
Probably the appropriate response.
what what did you expect from me on that one? Like I I really did not think you were going to say the Spurs. Honestly, I don't even think about them as a team that is there. I'm not saying they're 2 years away from being 2 years away, but they're like actually a year or two away. Like I
Right. No,
think,
I know that they're not like a contender. I just think it's interesting that people are so divided on like how good they're going to be this year.
well, that's because he's like Bol but better.
I think it's kind of because they actually, as bad as they were last year, they like beat some good teams, right? They had that weird home road game with Phoenix where they swept them, and then they beat the Nuggets, in which ended up, really affecting the playoffs.
Yeah, they can definitely win some games, and they'll have some highlights of the year. And Wembenyama
Right.
he might be the MVP conversation. I don't
Like
know.
he's gonna there's gonna be a lot of games, Ray, where he's the best player on the floor. That's kind of what's weird about their team, right?
Hmm. Yeah, but if I'm them, I you know take it slow.
Yeah.
Um, don't don't use up all it's don't use up all your fuel in the first segment of the race. Contention is a marathon, not a sprint. The
Gotcha.
team that I actually thought you were going to talk, I thought you were talking about the Knicks. The Knicks are a team is really interesting to me as like they nobody, no one in particular on that team is like, oh wow, they've got X player might be best in the league or whatever, best of their position even. But at the same time, they got a lot of guys
They do.
and they have an ethos, like they have an identity, they have an easier conference to navigate,
Yeah.
and
And
they're
a
one of the
crazy fan base.
And a crazy fan base. Yes. So that is also a part of it, is that they have a fan base that is ready and eager. And honestly, I think I don't want to say deserving, because what is it? What is the notion of fans deserve X or Y? But um, I have a lot of respect, I guess, for Knicks fans, because they do bring so much passion on a year in and year out basis for almost no reason. Like they don't need a reason to bring that level of intensity, and I have a lot of respect for that. That takes dedication, and I think when you do feel that, when it pays off, it's immensely rewarding and valuable and fun. When the Knicks are winning games and you see those side talk videos about people in the streets just losing it, I it's nice. And like I hate all New England sports, so I would love to see them just bully Boston into not having the success that they wish they did. That would be fun
Mm.
for me. For me, um, and so I think a lot of people are rooting for them, but at the same time are not really appreciating the level to which they kind of don't have that, like, who's their best, not who's their best player, but can they be in a series where they have the best player on the floor? I don't think anyone sees them that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think the East should be a ton of fun this year. I don't think it's really happened in our lifetime where the Celtics, Sixers, and Knicks were all good at the same time.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know if the East will be good,
Right?
but it will be entertaining.
Yes.
There's potential drama in Boston. There's, I mean, what is Philadelphia if not drama? And the Knicks are gonna be they're gonna fight. I don't know what, not literally, hopefully. I mean,
Right.
Knicks history
Yeah,
aside.
A Tom Thibodeau coach team is always going to bring their lunch pail.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Meanwhile, the West will just be. I'm
Cannibalizing itself.
tired of how. Yeah, I'm so tired. I am very ready for the expansion to happen and to, like, kick Minnesota or some other team over into the Eastern Conference, because
Billion.
it's fun. It's fun. It's interesting. You got, even
Yeah,
there are
unfortunately,
teams.
Jokic is already going to be like 33 when that happens.
Yeah, probably. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of teams that are interesting in the West. I don't want to say I like the Kings, but I love DeMar DeRozan. I'm a big fan of his game, and they've got De'Aaron Fox, they've got Sabonis. They like the beam sometimes, and I think that's fun.
They're no pushover, that's for sure.
Yeah, and there's a ton of teams like that. Memphis, I think, will be a team kind of in that territory of, like, oh, actually, remember them? They can play.
Oh, I'm really
Uh,
high on them. They're going to be really good.
whether that's New Orleans, or we could do a whole other podcast on walking through each team, and we have done that before in past years, of just walking through each team and talking about what their situation is. So, um, yeah, hopefully the Thunder are not a rising tide that swallows up the earth.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm not that worried about them.
Yeah. So anyway, I think we can close out here if that's cool.
Yep.
If you made it this far, 80 minutes in, really appreciate you. And yeah, you can find me online at Ravon Hackshaw on Twitter, X. You can follow me, and I make bowling content on occasion. I'm at Ravon Hackshaw on YouTube. If you want to drop me a like there, say hi. Always appreciate it. Maybe help me get a sponsorship. You can find Peter at Bucket Since '88. He talks about the Buffs, I feel like, more often than anything right now, and posts this particular photo with him in the Buffs fit, which I respect.
Oh yeah,
And he also is a professional stash wearer.
that's right.
I'm not gonna lie. I see. I grow facial hair. Don't get me wrong. I grow a lot of facial hair. I've never done just the stash. It's never. I'll think about it. I'll think about it. We'll see what happens.
Right.
Yeah, because man, it is something. But yeah, anyway, we will see you next time. Also, drop us a like on YouTube if you are listening in audio format. If you're on YouTube, feel free to give us a find on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean is how I listen to podcasts. Podbean is my favorite podcasting platform. Not that they're sponsoring us. Yeah, give us a like, a subscribe, say hi, and we'll see you next time. As always, go Nuggets. If I can end the stream, we'll see.